is the reclaiming tradition of witchcraft. So if you're unfamiliar with the reclaiming tradition, it's started really in the late 70s, early 80s. Starhawk is one of the most well-known of the originators of the tradition. She's got a lot of books. If you're curious who Starhawk is, check her out. She's an amazing human. And Reclaiming has a website, you know, reclaiming.org and all that fun stuff if you want to learn about that tradition. But that happened, I got involved with Reclaiming just because it was available to me, right? Like, who knows what my life would have looked like if it was a different tradition. But Reclaiming is a tradition that is very organic and ecstatic. So every ritual is different. Every ritual is new. Very rarely is a ritual repeated. And as I got involved in the reclaiming tradition, you know, in my early days as a practicing witch, I was very, very painfully shy, and I am an introvert. So I was honestly too scared. I was too scared to get involved with planning public ritual or really even taking classes. I was just so painfully shy. And it took about a decade of me dabbling and wandering and reading books and going to public rituals before I decided to just take some classes and get involved. And because I had dabbled a lot and I'd done other traditions and practiced in other ways, then I was actually ready to get involved with community, right? Like I'd had a really long sojourn as a solitary and very small group. And then I jumped into community with both feet. And so I cut my teeth in the reclaiming tradition, learning how to be a priestess. And I use the word priestess as a gender inclusive word, right? And because every ritual is new, because every ritual is organic and ecstatic, I learned so much about the nuance of planning ritual and how important it is to pay attention to some of these things that we might take for granted. And as a participant, I started to really see why some rituals work and some rituals don't. So I really do have to give a lot of love to the reclaiming tradition, because that is my home and that I am initiated into that tradition. But that is so much of how I developed as a ritualist. So that a lot of what you're going to get from me today is going to be talking about my experience in the reclaiming tradition. And, you know, there are some things reclaiming does really well. I'm also a Gardnerian, right? So I have like this ecstatic, every ritual is different. We're going to reinvent the wheel every time. And then I have this training of, we always do it this way. There's liturgy and there's rules. So I feel like that paradox, that dichotomy, the complete open expression and the following of liturgy have really informed how I practice. And that's a lot of what comes through. And, you know, I did write a book on this topic, right? A Witch's Guide to Creating and Performing Rituals That Actually Work. A little secret. I wanted to call this book Creating Rituals That Don't Suck. But Llewellyn didn't like that. So it didn't happen. That's not the name of the book. So, you know, don't tell anyone, just between us. That's what I wanted the book to be called. So in the book, you know, it really does go a lot into exploring those different paths, having a tradition that's more ecstatic, having a tradition that's based more on liturgy. Both of those things serve us as magical practitioners, right? There is a reason for both of those ways of expressing our magic. Okay, so I can get on a soapbox. We only have a half hour, y'all. So I have to make sure I can take a whole book's worth of information and squeeze it into a half hour question. And you want to put it in the chat, feel free to do that. I will try to get to it. And then if we have good timing, I will open up for questions at the end. If we have good timing, we might, it's only a half hour, y'all. Okay. So at the end of the day, the bottom line, creating and performing rituals is a skill. It really is. It's a skill. And some of us are going to be more naturally gifted at it. Some of us, it's just going to be a thing that we connect to and it's easy for us. Like some of us are really good runners. Some of us are really good at math. Some of us are really good readers, right? But just like running and math and reading, it's a skill that can be developed. So if you feel nervous or shy or uncertain about your ritual skill, that's okay. You just need to practice, right? We are spiritual practitioners. We have spiritual practices. We have to practice. So don't ever feel discouraged. And if you do have moments of ritual that are not so great, or if you do have a ritual that goes completely sideways, or if you do have a ritual that just flops, that's really great. It might not feel great in the moment, but it's really great because those moments where things don't work give us so much information. They're amazing learning opportunities. So don't ever feel sad or frustrated or disappointed if something doesn't go the way that you wanted it to. It's all part of the learning process. It's all part of your spiritual practice, right? We can learn and we can develop. We can learn these skills and we can make them better. And, the other part of it is, especially when it comes to coven work or group work or larger public rituals, we don't do it alone. We work with other folks and other community members who may have better skills in certain areas than we do. I know that's kind of a running joke that I have, is that's why witches work in covens, because I might suck at one particular style of ritual, but my coven mate's really good at it. And therefore we are a well-rounded one witch. We're just one well-rounded witch that shows up as a coven. So you don't have to be perfect at everything, but you can develop your skills. And all of this comes from what I call the 3 keys of witchcraft. The 3 keys of witchcraft are our individual practice, our individual way of approaching the magical realms, and they inform and help us create ritual. They show us who we are and how we show up. And if we understand who we are and how we show up, we will be better ritualists, right? It's part of the process. So my 3 keys of witchcraft, the first is know thyself. I've written this in every book I talk about this in every class that I have ever taught. The concept of know thyself, written above the doors of the Oracle at Delphi, were the words know thyself. It's one of the oldest spiritual principles. And basically it just means know why you do the things you do. Take time to explore, figure out what makes you tick as an individual and why. Right. And so this requires some introspection. This requires some maybe therapy. This requires you taking the time to get to know yourself and make sure that you're a healthy and well-rounded individual. When we take the time to do that, we become better spiritual practitioners. We become better leaders. We become better ritualists. We become better spellcasters, right? When we understand how we tick, when we understand why, it's going to help us grow. So that's my first key of witchcraft, know thyself. My second key of witchcraft is discernment. Discernment sounds like, oh yeah, like discernment means to understand or to judge well. Sure, I got that. I can judge well. I understand. I got it. But it's actually much more tricky than that, because it is like this delicate balance between your intuition and the chatter, your mind chatter. Discernment is a very important tool in a witch's arsenal, and it's an important tool in helping you plan ritual. So developing your discernment, having a relationship with your intuition, developing that conversation with your intuition and your inner voice, right? And of course, it's connected to knowing thyself, because everything's connected. And then the third key of witchcraft is bravery. Bravery. I am not a fan of armchair witchcraft. I'm just not. Like, we can learn so much from reading books. We can learn so much from researching on the internet. We can learn so much from being in chat rooms and Facebook groups and looking on Instagram at hashtags and all of that stuff. But we learn the most when we do something with that information. You've got to take action, and action requires bravery. Witchcraft, at the end of the day, asks you to be brave. So be brave, right? Create a ritual, do the thing, put yourself out there, practice magic. Don't just read about it, right? Bravery makes you have to take action. And action is, at the end of the day, what witchcraft's all about. We can read all the books and we can do all the research, but if we don't do something with that, what's the point? We got to do something. Do it. Okay. 3 keys of witchcraft. So rituals happen every day, and rituals happen for specific occasions, right? So for an example, a ritual that I do every day is I make a cup of tea. Here's my cup of tea. When I make my cup of tea in the morning, I do magic. I look at my schedule and I determine, okay, what's going to be challenging for me today? What's going to be easy for me today? Where do I need extra energy? Where do I need grace? And as I'm making my cup of tea, I make it a ritual. I open up to what I'm going to need for the day. I may offer some devotional prayers to the gods that I work with. I may sing a chant. It depends on the day. Every day is different, but I infuse my tea with what I know I'm going to need today. That's a ritual. And I do it every day. I drink tea every day because it's got a little bit of caffeine in it. And since I was forced to quit coffee, black tea is what I have. But it's a ritual that happens every day. It's important. It's part of my spiritual practice. Rituals are important. And then we have rituals that mark specific occasions. Maybe it's a full moon. Maybe it's Samhain. Maybe it is a rite of passage. Maybe it's a death honoring. We have these bigger rituals that might acknowledge the wheel of the year or the turning of the moon or an individual important marking that's going on in your life. Daily ritual and these big ritual concepts, one is not more important than the other. They are both vital to us as humans. And, one of my core beliefs is that our overculture is detached from mystery, right? The status quo out there in the world is detached from mystery and from connection to the earth. And by performing ritual, we get that back. We get mystery back. We get a spark of something wonderful back. And so it's those daily rituals of making our tea a spiritual moment, and those big rituals of marking rites of passage and honoring the wheel of the year and celebrating the moon, right? That bring us connection to mystery. So we need it as humans. We need it. We need to remember that the world is freaking magical. The world is amazing. The world is a blessing. And when we practice moments of ritual, both the daily and the big, it gives us a reminder of that mystery. It gives us a way to connect into that mystery, to plug in and remember, oh yeah, this is available for me every day. I don't have to wait for the full moon. I don't have to wait for Samhain. I don't have to wait for the perfect astrological thing to be happening. It's here every day. How freaking amazing is that, right? Okay. I have my notes down here on the table, so I'm like, okay, get off your soapbox, get to the point. So in the book, The Guide to Creating Rituals, I kind of break rituals down into 3 big concepts. And the way I phrase it is breath, bone, and blood, right? So the breath of ritual is those early beginning moments. It's that realization you even need to do a ritual. The breath of ritual is those first steps where you realize something needs to happen here. The breath of ritual is the intention. It's the determining, okay, I'm going to do this ritual. I'm going to cast this spell. I'm going to do this working. And this is the reason why, right? That intention. And I find intentions for ritual to actually be kind of difficult. It's really, in my opinion, one of the hardest parts of planning ritual is creating the intention for that ritual, because you want it to be specific. Just like if you think of a spell, when you work a spell, you want that spell to be specific for what you're working on, but you also have to leave room for mystery, right? You have to leave some space for the gods, your allies, whoever's looking out for you, your own God self, to get their little fingers in the mix and help manifest what it is. So the intention is important. It's the breath of ritual. It's what breathes life into the ritual. It's what influences how the ritual unfolds. And it's tricky, it's slippery, it's specific with openness, right? So that's like your first task to practice. It's that first skill, that first muscle to work out, creating intentions that are clear about what your desire is, but open to allow mystery, right? And I see a comment in the chat. I'm now delighting and thinking about all the tiny ways I can incorporate ritual into daily life. Watering plants, preparing and consuming meals, cleaning, getting dressed, bathing. Yes, 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 yes. Big twinkles to that, because that's what it's all about. There is so much magic in daily life. I love it. Thank you for that comment. Okay, so the breath of ritual. The bone of ritual is the actual steps, right? Think about our bones, it's our structure. It's the thing that holds us together. So the bone of ritual is, first we're going to cleanse, then we're going to ground, then we're going to cast a circle, then we're going to invoke the elements, then we're going to do the thing, then we're going to raise energy, right? The bone of ritual is the step-by-step that takes us from this thing to that thing. The bone of ritual, and again, my very humble opinion, is kind of the easy part, because once you create a skeleton, you can always use that skeleton for any ritual you perform. You might need to shift things around or modify things or do this first instead of that. But ultimately, once you really understand the structure, you can always use that structure. And, my experience, and it's been 30 years that I've been doing this crazy stuff. My experience is most ritual structures in modern witchcraft are very similar. It's pretty rare that I attend a public ritual or go to a conference or go to a big pagan event where someone does a ritual structure that I'm like, whoa, what is going on? I'm so confused. Usually it's kind of the same flow. And that's true for the most part. I know there are exceptions, y'all. I know there are exceptions. But for the most part, no matter the tradition, we kind of all do things in a similar vibe, in a similar flow. So getting the structure down is kind of the easy part, because there's a lot of information out there about structuring ritual. And if you belong to a specific tradition, your tradition probably has guidelines, maybe even rules. I know we don't like that word necessarily as witches. Rules, no. But yes, some of us have rules on how we create our ritual structures. So the bone of ritual is this, it's our bones, it's our structure, it's what we do, it's the path. Then we have the blood of ritual. And this is where I feel things get complicated, because the blood of ritual is that ineffable thing that happens in ritual. And no doubt you all have experienced this thing. It's when mystery shows up. It's the transitions where we flow from this thing to the next thing. It's knowing when we're raising energy and we're all singing and we're all chanting and we're all feeling it. It's knowing when we come to silence. It's that thing. And for me, in my experience, the blood of ritual is the hardest thing to just step into. This is the one that needs the most practice, right? This is the part of ritual. We can create skeletons, we can create intentions, we can do those things over and over again, and even kind of learn how to map it, right? So it feels easy. But the blood of ritual is those moments where you're like, oh, holy cow, something is happening. I don't know what to do in this moment, but I'm going to trust my instincts, right? Something is happening. Why did we all stop singing at the same second? Now there's this silence and all the hair is standing up on my body. And I'm getting that now talking about it. Like, I'm like, woo, those moments in ritual are like, that's why we keep doing ritual, because it's so magical and powerful. That's the blood of ritual. That is the part where you actually have to do ritual and step into those moments blindly and figure out what to do next. Those are the moments that are the hardest to explain. Those are and I write about it in the book, but you have to experience those moments. And those moments come through in solitary rituals. Those moments come through in coven rituals. Those moments come through in big conference or big event rituals. They don't always happen though, right? Sometimes the ritual just completes and we did our thing and it's great. But sometimes something else happens. And that's why we keep doing ritual. That's why we're witches. That's why we work with mystery, because those moments are amazing. They're awesome. They're inspiring, right? And that is what we need as humans. That's why, in my opinion, ritual is so important. And what our overculture is lacking is feeling those moments of, woo, I feel the chill, right? Those are the moments that remind us how magical it is to be a human being and how magical the world is. For me, it's often when the drums stop. There is so much subtext to that statement. Thank you, Inga, for saying that. For me, it's when the drums stop. Yes. Yes. I want to dig into that sentence. That's an amazing sentence. Thank you. Okay, so looking at the time, I want to keep going. So here are some things to consider. Here are some bullet points to consider when you're planning rituals for yourself and for a group and for a large group, because there is technology, I suppose. That might be the right word. There is technology that's going to be different when you're doing a ritual just for yourself, when you're doing ritual for a small group, and when you're doing ritual for a large group. There are other things to take into consideration. When you're doing a ritual for yourself, you don't necessarily have to worry about any people's physical needs except your own. And you know what your physical needs are. So it's easy to make sure you have a chair close by, or you have a pillow for your back, or you have what you need. When you're doing a ritual for 100, 200, 1,000 people, you still have to remember what everyone's physical needs might be. You can't track everyone's physical needs, but you have to remember everyone might not be able to do a spiral dance. Everyone might not be able to stand for a trance for 30 minutes. What am I going to do in my ritual setup process to create space for all of the needs that might come up? It's a lot to plan a ritual for a large group. And so those are the things to keep in mind. When all of these things are the same, whether it's for you, for a small group, or for a large group, but the stakes get higher. For you, you know what you need. A small group, it's easy to check in and be like, what does everyone need? A large group, it gets more complicated, right? So the first bullet point is why. Why are we doing this ritual? What's the point? And that's where the intention comes in too. We're doing this ritual because it's Samhain and we want to honor our beloved dead. We're doing this ritual because we want to do a revel for Dionysus and we want to honor Dionysus. I'm doing this ritual because I need a morning practice to help me connect into mystery. My coven's doing this ritual because one of our beloveds is ill and we want to do a healing spell for them. Why? The why. The why connects back to the breath. Then we have to ask, when? When are we doing this ritual? Are we doing it on the full moon? Are we doing it on Samhain night? Are we doing it right now because it's an emergency and we don't got time to mess around with all the shenanigans? Are we doing it on Saturday because that's when we can rent the hall? Are we doing it on Sunday because it's cheaper to rent the hall on Sunday than on Saturday, right? When are we doing this ritual? Where are we doing this ritual? Is it going to be at my house? Is it going to be in the backyard? Is it going to be at a public park? Where are we doing the ritual? The where will also help you figure out some of the ways you may need to take care of the practitioners or the participants, right? If we're going to the beach for a ritual, that might be something that excludes people with certain physical needs. The beach isn't accessible for everyone unless, there's a space where like a wheelchair could not have to trudge through the sand. The where is going to help you really look at how everyone's needs are going to be taken care of. And then the last question to ask is, for who? Is this for you? Is it for your coven? Is it for community? You might be doing a ritual for yourself, but inviting people to participate, inviting people to witness. It's for you. Make it about you. But understand that there are witnesses whose needs you might also need to be taken care of or be aware of. So all of this is to say, planning a ritual can be very simple as pouring hot water over a tea bag every morning and breathing your prayers for the day into it. And rituals can be exceptionally complicated, where there's a dozen priestesses and there's moving parts and there's invocations and there's lighting changes and there's music accompaniment and the whole breadth of everything in between. And they are all, that whole window, are all so important. They are, the tiny daily tea ritual is no less important than the huge Samhain ritual with the music and moving parts and lighting changes. They're all important. They all feed our relationship to mystery. They all feed our relationship to witchcraft. And so I'm going to encourage you to practice. And of course, you know, I wrote this lovely book, A Witch's Guide to Creating Ritual. And there are a ton of guidelines in this book. There are practice rituals. There are daily rituals. There are correspondences, because I am a correspondence nerd and I love having correspondences in all of my spells and workings. But you know, this is the book that I wished I had had access to when I was a younger witch. That gives me, because I'm a Taurus and I like organization, but I have a Libra moon, and so I like things to be beautiful and flowing. I needed something in my younger days that was like, do this, and do this, but also let it be beautiful. Let there be woo. Let there be mystery. And so hopefully that comes through in this book. It gives you the this and the this and the this, and here's how we make space for mystery. So I'm noticing there's just a minute left. If you do have a question that I haven't specifically touched on, feel free to put that into the chat. But I go into some of these very specific things, like music has come up, drumming has come up. I talk about voice and how you can change the way your voice is in order to influence ritual. You know, being a whispering invites people in. It feels like something mysterious is about to happen. Being loud so that if you are in a large group, you can make sure that the people in the back of the room can hear you. So playing with voice is also an important part of ritual, and it's something we forget. It's something we take for granted. And it even works when you're by yourself. If you whisper to yourself, it feels mysterious. Try it. I always encourage my students to speak out loud. Speak out loud. Say the thing out loud, even if it makes you feel weird. It's important. It is 9:30 on the button, y'all. So what I would encourage is for you to do a ritual today. Be brave, be bold. Remember, the third key of witchcraft is bravery. Go and do some ritual today. Anoint your sandwich at lunch with a blessing. Draw a pentacle over your dinner before you eat it. Go for a walk and notice all the mystery in the world. Go do a ritual today. I highly encourage it. And I appreciate all of you for coming. I appreciate Llewellyn for doing this fun event. And go do witchy things.